上次分享了一些引文，大家都非常喜欢。那今天就来分享更多的 quotes， 希望给大家一大早就有正能量。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. At the beginning of the year, we gave you a list of quotes that were on our mind going into 2022. Well, it's half a year later, we should be a little older, a little wiser, and there are a few more things that have been on our mind. Today, we want to share with you the quotes that we're thinking about to get us through the second half of 2022.
上次跟大家分享了一些 quotes， 还有一些学员还会写信给我们说他们很喜欢，那当然也隔了有点时间。那今天呢，想要来带给大家更多我们最近喜欢的一些引文啊，然后希望能够带给大家一些正能量，因为我知道很多人都是在通勤的时候听我们的 podcast. So hopefully these quotes can start your day off right. So I'm going to start with the quotes that I like recently. 那第一个呢，它是来自 Dwayne Johnson, which is The Rock. 他就说啦 When you focus on you, you grow. When you focus on shit, shit grows.
That's a very straightforward way to kick off this episode.
Yeah, well, I like it straightforward these days.
And I think that's what, aside from his obvious movie star career, that I don't think you can go through a single year without him being in at least 5 different movies in the cinema, on Netflix, Disney, etc. But he also has a tequila empire. He has been building an energy drink empire. So this is a man who does everything.
Yeah.
And this is just a really interesting way to frame out what's going on. And it's just a negative mindset mentality, right?
当如果你一直想到负面的事情的时候，这个东西就会变得越来越大。在你的心中，它变成是一个 priority， 越来越重要。但是 if that's something that doesn't serve you, if that's something that just no longer makes you happy, then you focus on what makes you you. When you focus on you, you grow.
Which builds into the second quote that Sherry chose quite nicely. Trying to control what is outside of your control will control you.
那这个来自谁呢？我就没有办法跟大家讲。I don't really know where it come from, but I really like this, right? 有的时候我们生活当中并不是所有事情都是可以控制的。Honestly, I think with the pandemic, oh my gosh, 大家应该都深刻的能够了解得到 there's just so much in life that you cannot control. 但是当你又很试着想要去 control 这些不能 control 的事情呢，这整件事情会过来 control you. I think it's like it's like a catch-22, right?
And this reminds me of, it's actually a sign you'll see quite often in, say, my grandparents' generations. Houses, and it's kind of a prayer. It's like a Christian Catholic prayer, but it's not so formal. It's just, Lord, give me the strength to control the things that I can and to accept the things that I can't.
That's a nice one.
And it's basically the idea is like, if something is in your control and you can do something about it, try and have the strength to do something about it. But there's a lot of things that you cannot control.
Exactly.
And you either need to have to accept it or just move on.
So the next one, again, 我不太确定这个是谁讲的 quote, but here's the quote. Step out of your comfort zone and face your fears. Growth takes place when you are challenged, not when you're comfortable. 那我觉得这个尤其是后半句我非常喜欢。我们成长通常都是来自于一些挫败，一些困难，并不是来自于 当你非常舒服的时候，或者是过着很舒适的生活。
The version that you found was an anonymous or an uncredited version. But there's actually a very similar quote related to this from one of my favorite authors and thinkers, Josh Waitzkin. Child chess prodigy. He's had movies and books written about him. But he wrote a book about the art of learning. And in there, one of his most quoted sayings is, the key to pursuing excellence is to embrace an organic, long-term learning process and not to live in a shell of static, safe mediocrity. Usually, growth comes at the expense of previous comfort or safety. Longer way to say it, but it's the idea that if you want growth, it comes from stepping out of your safety zone, stepping out of your bubble. And actually pursuing it over the long term. So it's not like I stand out of my comfort zone for like 5 seconds and then I jump back in. Yeah. That's growth. It's actually just this long-term pursuit of pushing yourself.
Right. So I like the next one. The more you count your blessings, the more blessings you'll have to count. 我很喜欢这一句，因为呢，我们先讲一下好了。Count your blessings. 这个我觉得是我们常在国外会听到的一个 phrase, right? Count your blessings. I mean, what does it really mean to you?
Again, this is more traditionally of a Christian mindset. And they're thinking in terms of like the blessings that God has given you. But in a more secular sense, it's just that you should be appreciative of the good things in your life. And the more appreciative of good things in your life you are, the more good things will come for you to appreciate.
Yeah. 所以我觉得这个刚跟我们第一个嘛，这 Dwayne Johnson 讲的 right? When you focus on something good, that will grow. But if you focus on something bad, the bad will grow. 但是如果你，所以这一句就是说，如果你 focus 在你可以感激的事情 something that you can be thankful, you can appreciate, and that will grow too. And the more you could count.
Our next quote comes from a titan of history, J.P. Morgan. There's a long history. You could talk about that. Google him if you want to know who he was.
Yeah.
But he has a great quote that the first step towards getting somewhere is to decide that you are not going to stay where you are.
I love this one because a lot of times, 那我觉得其实对我们这种创业人士好了 like entrepreneurs like us, there's really never the right time to do something so risky. But the most important thing is just do it, right? So 这个就是you just stepping out and actually start something, that becomes the first, that becomes the most important thing.
Right. We have that English adage that every great adventure starts with one step or starts with the first step. It's that first thing going forward, which actually ties into my next quote, which comes from Kevin Kelly, who used to be the lead executive editor for Wired magazine. He also wrote for the New York Times, Esquire, Harper's, any major economics or technology thinking magazine that comes to mind, he probably wrote for or had some major role in. But every year, he's 70 now. He outputs like this long list of just life advice. And it's not all like very deep thinking process. Sometimes it just is good advice. But for his 70th birthday, he wrote an article called 103 Bits of Advice I Wish I Had Known. And one of the first things he writes is, about 99% of the time, the right time is right now.
So I think that's like the same sentiment, right? A lot of times 我觉得我们都会去想什么时机才是最完美的 We try to plan to have that perfect moment to come and when we're ready, right? But when are you ever really going to be ready to do anything risky in life?
Right. So there's always something that's going to come up. There's literally never a point in our lives where we can go back and just be like, oh, like nothing happened that year. Nothing. It's probably not true. From that same list of Kevin Kelly, there's another thing that he said that I also really like. And again, not super deep, but definitely something that I have to remind myself more of over time is the biggest lie we tell ourselves is, I don't need to write this down. I'll remember it.
Now, tell me why this is something you have to remind yourself.
As we get older, Or just as we get busier, we have a tendency to think, oh, I'll remember that. Or, oh, it's not a big deal. That'll definitely pop up. In these moments where everything is coming together, you're running multiple projects, you have, say, family stuff to deal with, you maybe have housework stuff to deal with. It's very easy for something small to just slip by. And if it's not written down, it's not on your calendar, it's really painful. And what's even more prevalent about this is that the technology around us allows us to write down reminders easier than ever. I am something who actually writes down a to-do list manually just because it's a better process for me. But it's like with your phone, with Siri, with all your smart devices, like there's literally no reason anymore that you can't write a note down. That excuse of, oh, I don't have a pen and paper, I'll just remember this, that's gone. Like you always have access to write stuff down. And so this is something I have to tell myself. It's like, no, just write it down. Remember it.
I think for me, 我觉得对我来讲 writing stuff down that I have to do 比如说我今天一定要做一些什么事情这个通常我都会常提醒自己那我一定会把它放在我calendar 上面 But 有一件事情是我常常会觉得没有关系我明天大概还会记得就是一些灵感吧 I think like inspiration, good ideas, things that makes me happy I tend to forget that I need to treasure those moments. I need to just put that in, write it down, put it on my phone or put it on my calendar. 有的时候还是会忘记. So to me, that is something I probably need to remind myself. Yeah.
Like record the good stuff.
Yeah,
right?
The good stuff. Exactly.
Very simple piece of advice. I wouldn't tell you it's a quote, but when looking through his advice, it's just like, yeah, I need to write stuff down.
没错，那其实 speaking of which, 我会把今天我们所分享所有的一些 quotes 全部都放在我们 show notes 当中。所以如果有任何一个让你觉得蛮开心的 makes you happy, makes you smile a little bit, just screenshot it, right? 或者就是放在你的手机上面 remind you every single day.
We hope that you enjoyed this slight segue into the quotes that are bringing us into the second half of 2022. If there's anything that inspires you or grabs you, write it down, put it in front of you, and use it as a guiding light to how you handle the rest of this year. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production. Produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.